Hey guys, my name is Brittany and welcome back to my channel, and today we'll be rereading the Divergent series.
It's Brittany, bitch.
Divergent was a huge phenomenon after the success of the Hunger Games, and I really enjoyed this when I was a teenager, and I did read the first and the second books. I realized I never actually read the third book, but I did watch the movie, so I know what happens, but I never actually read the third book. So I wonder if something about that just teetered out for me, or if it was just kind of like the natural progression of me. Like, I believe I went into college at that point. I have to look back at the dates to find out exactly what happened, but I'm pretty sure it went into me like going to my college days, and I did not read as much during college because I was too fucking busy reading dank ass fucking classics. So anywho, I'm gonna get back in this series for the first time ever, and I'm really excited because I've just had like a hankering for some YA dystopian, but especially the type that like I used to read. You know what I mean? Like when I was a teenager, like YA dystopian was just that bitch. If you weren't reading paranormal romance or YA dystopian, I don't know what the fuck you were reading when you were a teenager during the 2010s, but you weren't it. And it definitely shaped who we are today as adults, and it also shaped younger minds than that. So you know what? I think it's a really cool genre. Even though the genre may get a lot of flack, I think it's actually incredibly important. And the fact that I can still name all 5 fucking factions today and remember the main character's name as well as the love character name, I feel like that is pretty rare in and of itself, because I can still love a book and give it 5 stars and I cannot remember the fucking character's name even from like a year ago. So the fact that I can remember everything about this book is fucking crazy. There are 5 factions. We have Erudite, Dauntless, Amity, Candor, and Ab-NE-gation. So Erudite is like the smart people, and then we have Ab-NE-gation is the selfless, Candor is people who are truthful, Amity is people who are kind, and Dauntless is people who are brave. So in this world, everybody's a faction. So it's faction before blood, and when you're 16, you do this like choosing ceremony where you decide what faction you want to be in. So you could stay in the faction you grew up in, or you could choose another one. But if you fail their initiations, you become factionless, which basically means you're homeless and you don't belong to a certain faction. And obviously each one of the factions values something, and it's just a really interesting personality system. And listen, it is still very flawed. Like in my opinion, it is still a very flawed system. It doesn't make a whole lot of fucking sense, but it's a really interesting concept, especially when I was a teenager. Like you always like think like which faction would you be? And that's why there's so many like faction quizzes online, and I used to take them all the time, and guess what? I got the same results all the time because I think we still have certain characteristics that are more prominent than others. Throughout this entire video, I'm going to be using this specific book cover for all of them. Even though now there are more updated versions, I'm not gonna lie, the updated versions are actually really fucking cool, but I didn't grow up with those, right? Those are newer ones, and even though they're actually kind of bomb, they definitely were not the style back in the day, and especially because this is a nostalgia trip for me, I'm going to use the old original covers, which are far less interesting, but for some reason convey YA dystopian of the time, and so thus I'll be using those. So I'm gonna get started on Divergent and get back to you guys. I might just finish them as a whole and then get back to you. I haven't decided yet, but it also depends if something crazy interesting happens. But I feel like for such a very famous YA dystopian, like we already know a lot what's gonna happen, and if you don't know, I probably would skip this video for now, just because I definitely will go into some spoilers, because this book's been out for a very fucking long time. This series has been out for a very fucking long time. I'm just gonna go into it and give you my full opinions on every single one of these novels, especially because I never actually read the third novel, which I realized when I checked my Goodreads. So that one I've never actually read, which makes sense because I don't have any memories of reading it. I only have memories of reading the first and the second novels. So I can hopefully finish Divergent by tomorrow or the next day, and then I'll get back to you guys with my full thoughts. So I am finishing Divergent, and I actually really enjoy this. I'm gonna give it 4 stars. I think the reason this book got 4 stars is just honestly, it's incredibly nostalgic. I love the world because I was just so enveloped in it as a teenager, and I was so obsessed with it because it was so interesting. And even when I was a teenager, I realized there was obviously a lot of like glaring issues with the novel. But as an adult, I just definitely cannot overlook those issues, but it still is gonna get 4 stars. I think the fun part of any book is really getting to see the world through your main character's eyes. And I think this kind of a drawback for this book is I actually think this is one of those books that could have benefited from a different perspective, because we only really get to see Triss grow up in Abnegation and then go on to Dauntless. And I think it would have been a little bit more productive to have other viewpoints. I'm not really sure how that story would have turned out, but I think it's my frustration because looking back on this, debuted debuted how many fucking years ago? And there's still no like companion novels explaining the other factions. We only have companion novels with 4 in them, and I don't particularly care for 4. Not that he's a bad character, but he's not like a particularly interesting character to me. And I think on top of that, he was also in the same 2 fucking factions. He also grew up in Abnegation and then went to Dauntless. So I just feel like I don't really get a whole lot of like world building with them. And I think that's what I'm looking for, is world building. And that's something that I look for in all my books, but especially one that's a dystopian novel. And this one really fell flat on that. I really just wanted more from this world. It's basically a future version of Chicago where there are 5 different factions. So we have the Erudite, Dauntless, Amity, Candor, and Ab-NE-gation. So we have all 5 of them, and they basically work together to create this city. And there are a lot of issues between them. But on top of that, there's just a lot of issues in the factions themselves. Like, I really don't know what the fuck Candor does. Like, I have no idea what that entire faction does, because what it seems like is they're just like the lawyers and judges of this world. And if everyone is a lawyer or a judge, like, what is the point of that faction? Because it seems like the factionless, who are basically the homeless people, they have all like the blue collar jobs. So they're the ones being bus drivers or doing construction. And I just like find it really weird and interesting. Like, it's an interesting concept, but it just seems really rooted in like a lot of not great stuff. And there's nothing really fucking explained. Like, what does Candor do all day? And also, if Candor are the honest ones and they believe like dishonesty is like terrible, why aren't they the ones running the government? Because if they can't lie and they've been trained not to lie, shouldn't they be involved in government? Because right now government is all Abnegation, which I think is bad in any sense. Why won't they... Like, why isn't there like not a House of Representatives here? Why is there not like 2 or 3 chosen people from each faction weighing in on issues? Like, I just feel like, again, like, I don't really know. I need to look up what her inspiration was for this. I know a lot of it was the Hunger Games specifically and making sure that her story turned out different, but like in terms of creating her world, I just feel like there's a lot to be desired. That's my frustration with this, and it's been with the entire series. I really want to know more about each faction, and I know that in book 2 we get to go into Amity a little bit, which is really interesting because I like to see again how a different faction lives, and I just again would have loved some fucking companion novels or something with other people's points of view, because I really want to know what goes on in these factions. I want to understand the world a little bit better, and like I understand the whole point of the world because I know the ending and stuff, but at the same time I just feel like it's not done very well still. Like, I like the idea, but it's also just very heavily draped in stereotypes. The Dauntless, of course, are the ones who wear black and get piercing and tattoos because anybody who's smart enough, you know, to wear glasses and work in front of a computer all day can't possibly fathom having a whole bunch of piercings and tattoos. It's very weird stereotypes. I don't know. Something about this just does not work, but the nostalgia factor of this is what gave it such a high rating for sure, because I think it's a really cool idea, but it just wasn't fleshed out in a good way. But I'm still like attracted to the plot because I think the plot itself is kind of interesting, like unweaving what's been going on and how the factions have been pitted together a little bit. Again, doesn't make sense the fact that Erudite's the one publishing articles, because isn't Candor the one in charge of journalism? So shouldn't they be the one doing articles because they're honest? They'd only publish factual information. I also don't understand why Erudite is not in charge of healthcare. Listen, this system doesn't work, period. Okay, so I'm gonna spoil the ending. It doesn't work. But on top of that, like, I just feel like something is really, really missing from this. Like, the amount of plot holes in this has created a Swiss cheese book. There are so many plot holes. I just don't even know what to do with it. Did I enjoy my reread of it? Absolutely. But I feel like, especially after sitting with it, like, I'm just so frustrated because that's the same way I felt when I first read it too. Like, I liked the idea and I was really excited, but like, knowing what the other books give us, like, I'm still upset because I really don't care about a revolt. I also want to know about your city. Like, I feel like we didn't get enough time in the fucking city before everything's like torn down. You know what I mean? Like, I'm way too invested in this series. I think that's the problem, is like, I'm invested in it. That's why I care so much, because I want it to be better. And like, I just, after all these years, why haven't you gone back and like rewritten stuff or added in like something or a companion novel? Like, she's moved on to bigger and better things and she's done like standalone adult stuff. I don't know if that's what she's focusing on, but like Divergent was like such an interesting concept. Why was it not fleshed out better? And she apparently wrote this in a month. I believe it. Anyway, I will literally talk about this book for fucking ever in my frustrations about how the factions don't make any fucking sense. And how also I really don't care about the romance between Triss and 4, because 4 is 18 and she's 16. They make it out to be like a really huge age difference. I think the age difference for me isn't that big of a deal. It's the fact that like he's like partially a leader of like Dauntless and he's in a power position, which I don't like. And she's not in a power position. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, I'm gonna move on to Insurgent and then let you guys know when I finish that. I know that Insurgent takes place where they basically escaped from the city after Janine, the evil erudite, basically turned the Dauntless into like a killing machine with like her mind control shit. So now they've escaped the city and they're basically hiding out in Amity. And I don't remember a whole lot past that. I know they have to like leave Amity for a reason later on, but I need a refresher. I'd also like to hit up the movies because I want to see how different they are. But again, I have not found them on anything. And I also need to force my brother to watch them. So that will be a feat all in itself. So we're going to see how that goes. So I'm gonna fill you guys in on the fact that I rewatched the Divergent film for the first time in like fucking years. And I have to say that the movie's actually worse than the book. And I say that with my whole heart, except for the fact that Kate Winslet is in it as Janine and she does an incredible fucking job. Like she's like the perfect Janine. And Jai Courtney, you guys probably know from like the Suicide Squad or something. This is where I knew him from. Like he was in Divergent as Eric. And wow, this is such a hot look for him. Like this is, wow. Sexy. I'm sorry. I'm just like total eye candy the entire film. Even though he's like the biggest asshole. And in the book, he's like a psychopath, right? Like he's not a hot character at all in the book. But in the movie, that bitch is eye candy. So I enjoyed those bits of it. But otherwise, the movie as a whole just like skips over all the important like character building and like relationship building things. So like her friends don't even seem like her friends in the film at all. They leave out like all this other important things and they completely change events. And I think that's why, because I actually ended up watching the Insurgent film before I actually read the book. And I think that's why they're so different, because they took out totally different storylines. Like they took out storylines from the first book and didn't put them in the film. Like they cut out Edward getting like, you know, in the eye with a butter knife and all these other things. Like they just changed the way events happen. But I think it was a detriment to the film, like 100%. I just feel like they really did it a disservice. And I feel like the book was actually a lot better, which is kind of a shame because it's very like visually stunning and it's like 2.5 hours long. And you somehow didn't get all that crap in there that I wanted to see. You know what I mean? They focus heavily on the romance between Tris and him, but there's so many just other like little big things that like were big scenes that like impact the rest of the series. I'm just kind of surprised they didn't put in there. But anyway, I will definitely be continuing on with watching the movie series along with this if I can find them. I think I found them on Hulu, I think. But damn, Erica's daddy in this, I forgot. I don't know what it is about this look. Not usually my type, but for some reason this just works for me. And you guys definitely just watch it just for that. You know, by the way, I need to link the YouTube down below. I found a video that just put all of his parts of the film together in a video clip. You can just watch that because that was enjoyable and I watched that as well. But anyway, I ended up finishing Insurgent, the book, and I think I'm gonna give this one 2.5 stars. Honestly, it is definitely, I think it's probably the weakest in the series from what I remember. I didn't really enjoy it that much. I mean, I enjoyed parts of it because obviously it's a continuation of the series, but I am kind of curious how the movie's gonna work now because they cut out so many like storylines. So I'm curious. Insurgent starts where Divergent ended and we are following Tris and her like ragtag group of friends and family members or whatever, and they're in Amity hiding out. They're like they're refugees basically, hiding out in Amity. And then, you know, they go through some choices and decide to go back to Dauntless and also their crap. It got really boring after that point. I think honestly the best part of this book was seeing how Amity worked a little bit because that's the thing I've always wanted from these books. I want to know more about each faction. Like I want to live in this faction and feel it out. And we were in Candor a lot in this book, and I feel like I still have no idea what the fuck Candor does. And they even point out in the book in like a direct quote where they were talking about like, what does Candor even do? Like, we don't need you. And I was like, exactly, why does this fucking faction exist if nobody needs them? What are they doing? I think it was someone who's Dauntless said that. They're like, we don't need you, bro. And I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been saying from the beginning. And I still feel that way. I just feel like Candor, what are you doing? What are you doing? Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Literally the entirety of this book was like so mentally like in Trish's head, which sometimes I like, but not in this instance because she was worried about killing Will, which he was under assimilation and she's still beating herself up about it, which like I totally understand, but that just like takes over the entire book. And her and Four are fighting about everything constantly. Like I don't even know how they weren't really a good couple to begin with. Like I don't really see the appeal at all. Other than the fact that they came from the same faction, but they don't really have chemistry to me in general. I don't really care. But especially now that there's like she's not like the initiate anymore and she's like in Dauntless, and there's just kind of seems like no reason for them to be together. I just don't feel like they're really that good of a couple, especially because they're fighting about the most dumb shit. Like Tris is like risking her life and he's like, I'm gonna break up with you if you do that again. Like I fucking care, bitch. Break up with her. I don't give a shit. I wish you would.
No.
Also, I'm really sad because Eric in this dies, so I'm gonna be really upset that he has to die in Insurgent because he is the best part of those fucking films. I'm gonna tell you right now. And I'm a little sad about that, but that's fine. Janine also at the end dies, which is annoying because as characters, they were actually like the best characters, like the most interesting to read, and now they're both dead. And then they basically find this like module that explains that like something is going on in the city. It's not what it seems. This is what like Janine and everything was trying to hide or whatever. And basically the city is like a test. And Triss is, I think it's probably her grandmother or great grandmother. She is the one who like starts this thing, like this whole city. Like she starts the faction system. So we obviously find out this is definitely dystopian. This is definitely like they've been lied to. Things are different. This is a different kind of a city thing going on here. Killing Janine should have lasted a lot longer, I have to say. Also, killing Eric really could have lasted a lot longer. But on top of that, like that ending was like the last page of the book, and it was fascinating, and I always liked that, and I wanted to continue on. But I'm pretty sure the movie doesn't do that. So now I have to watch it to find out if I'm wrong. But that's what it says in my review too. So I think I'm right. But anyway, I will talk to you guys when I finish Allegiant. And I would really also like to get to Insurgent, the movie. So we'll see how that goes. But I just want some Eric eye candy before he's gonna... So I'm literally out here getting some chicken tenders, but I just wanted to fill you guys in on the fact that I did finish Allegiant. So I think I'm gonna ride it to 3 stars. I really don't know how to feel about this book. I feel like since I never actually read it the first time, like I didn't know what was gonna happen, so I kind of went into it like fresh. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I know that obviously, I knew that Triss died. I knew that she died. I'm okay with how it ended. Like I honestly feel like she deserved to die. Like not like in a bad way, but like it made sense for her and her story arc and like who she is as a person. Like it just made sense. So Triss died. I actually teared up a little bit whenever Four realized that she was really gone. Like it was actually a touching moment. I think it ended well, but I feel like we get the wool pulled from our eyes. We find out that like this Chicago is an experiment to basically like weed out bad genes, and people who are divergent have clean genes and they're like good to like re-enter society or like whatever, and people that aren't divergent, they have like bad genes. They're like their genes are like still fucked up. So Four, by the way, finds out that like even though he can like manipulate his simulations, he actually is not divergent. And I think that was like a whole thing for him. Like he went through like an emotional turmoil, realizing like he's really not special. His genes are still like mutated and they're like fucked up. And basically bad genes in their world is like why there's like poverty and crime and like everything bad in the world, violence is related to bad genes, which I think is a really interesting take. I don't really know if I agree with it, and I feel like there's not enough basis for that, but like whatever. I think it's an interesting world. Again, I just feel like nothing is ever explained the way that I want it to be explained. Like I feel like it's a cool concept, but like once the wool is pulled, I'm like, I don't really feel like that was that cool of an explanation. I have to say, like I was really not that impressed. Sadly, it was just kind of like underwhelming for me, and I feel like I didn't learn anything new about all the other characters. I liked Peter's thing where Peter basically gave himself like this memory serum so he could like start over. I really wish there was more of a basis for like why he wanted to. He basically said he didn't want to like be this version of himself, but I wish we like found out. I don't know if I missed or something. Like I don't know if Peter was like abused in his childhood or something. Like I don't know like how Peter became who he was, because I feel like resetting his memory, if that's just his character, like as a person, like that's just who he is, like he's just like a mean person, like he just, you know what I mean, then I don't feel like it would reset his whole personality, you know what I mean? So there obviously would be like some family trauma or something in there that I missed or wasn't included, and I would have liked that for sure. But I enjoyed the fact that Peter like had his like growth. I feel like nobody had a redemption arc in this book except for Peter, honestly, and that's fine. I just wish there was more of a thing, and I'm still like mad that like I'm also just like kind of unimpressed. Like I feel like I wanted more out of an ending, and I feel like this is one of those books, I agree with people that it could have been split out actually into 2 books and further explained, because I feel like nothing was really explained the way that I wanted, so it didn't make sense. Like I wasn't really behind like what happened and like the memory serum thing, and they're gonna restart everything. It just didn't really, I don't know, it wasn't like an eventful ending for me. I honestly feel like if I ever reread the series, I would just reread the first one, because the first one just gives me like those feels and those vibes and the nostalgia. The second book really wasn't that great, and I feel like this one just was like like incrementally, like slightly better than the second book. That's just my opinion. I feel like I still didn't get what I wanted out of this series. So anyway, I'm not sure if I filled you in on the fact that I did watch Insurgent, by the way. Was not impressed. They completely changed the storylines. I understand that they did take out some of the storylines, but like their whole simulation thing was just stupid. In the book originally, they had this serum, and so like they were trying to like figure out how to alter the serum to alter Triss's brain and like get her to finally stop being divergent in the simulations. And in the fucking movie, there was like a box that they stole from Ab-NE-gation, and what are you doing? They stole this box from Ab-NE-gation, and you have to like play through all the modules, and like everyone kept dying. I don't know, I just didn't like it. And also I didn't like how like in the book Triss was like set to die, like she was scheduled to be executed, and that's how that whole thing happened, because it was never explained how she somehow like survived the simulation. Like how did Peter do that? It didn't make any sense. It did not make any sense. I didn't like it. I didn't like the movie version. Eric's deaths and Janine's deaths were really fast and really annoying, and I'm like upset about it, but whatever. Now I'm going to watch Allegiant, the movie. I know there should be 2 parts. I do know that the second movie like never technically came out in theaters. It only was like dropped to DVD. So I'm gonna see if I can even find the second one, because I don't know if only the first one's maybe like on Hulu, but we're gonna find out. So I'm gonna try and watch that this next couple of days here and give you guys an update, because I was gonna end this video here, but like it just makes more sense because I've already filled you on the other books and the other movies, and like why not just include the last 2 movies in this little like rendezvous of ours. So anyway, I will watch those and then get back to you guys, and hopefully they're a little better, but honestly my brother and I are kind of dreading watching them, so okay, bye. I just want to let you guys know that we did end up trying to watch Allegiant, which I guess was only 1 movie. I don't think there was a part 2. I think I was wrong. We DNF'd this movie. We were both incredibly bored, and I just made the executive decision to like not torture myself any further with this, so can't really give you an opinion on Allegiant, but not my favorite. Not my favorite. It's not very often that I DNF a film, but I'm usually not wrong, and it just didn't work out for us. So anyway, thank you guys so much for this fun experiment. It was really fun getting to reread the entire series. Would I do this again? No. I would definitely just reread Divergent, and if I'm ever getting like the feel for Divergent, the rest of the series can kind of suck my ass. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys all very soon. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.